Oregon, Reckon, Kane, Oregon, Gon, 7-8 is a state in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States. It is a part of the Western U.S., with the Columbia River delineating much of Oregon's northern boundary with Washington, while the Snake River delineates much of its eastern boundary with Idaho. The 40 to north parallel delineates the southern boundary with California and Nevada. The western boundary is formed by the Pacific Ocean. Oregon has been home to many indigenous nations for thousands of years. The first European traders, explorers, and settlers began exploring what is now Oregon's Pacific coast in the early to mid-16th century. As early as 1564, the Spanish began sending vessels northeast from the Philippines, riding the Kuroshio Current in a sweeping circular route across the northern part of the Pacific. In 1592, Juan de Fuca undertook detailed mapping and studies of ocean currents in the Pacific Northwest, including the Oregon coast as well as the strait now bearing his name. The Lewis and Clark expedition traversed Oregon in the early 1800s, and the first permanent European settlements in Oregon were established by fur trappers and traders. In 1843, an autonomous government was formed in the Oregon Country, and the Oregon Territory was created in 1848. Oregon became the 33rd state of the U.S. on February 14, 1859. Today, with 4.2 million people, over 98,000 square miles, 250,000 square kilometers, Oregon is the 9th largest and 27th most populous U.S. state. The capital, Salem, is the 3rd most populous city in Oregon, with 175,535 residents. 9 Portland, with 652,503, ranks as the 26th among U.S. cities. The Portland metropolitan area, which includes neighboring counties in Washington, is the 25th largest metro area in the nation, with a population of 2,512,859. Oregon is also one of the most geographically diverse states in the U.S., 10 marked by volcanoes, abundant bodies of water, dense evergreen and mixed forests, as well as high deserts and semi-arid shrublands. At 11,249 feet 3,429 meters, Mount Hood is the state's highest point. Oregon's only national park, Crater Lake National Park, comprises the caldera surrounding Crater Lake, the deepest lake in the U.S. The state is also home to the single largest organism in the world, Armillaria ostoe, a fungus that runs beneath 2,200 acres 8.9 square kilometers of the Malheur National Forest. 11 Oregon's economy has historically been powered by various forms of agriculture, fishing, logging, and hydro. Oregon is the top lumber producer of the contiguous U.S., with the lumber industry dominating the state's economy during the 20th century. 12 Technology is another one of Oregon's major economic forces. Beginning in the 1970s, with the establishment of the Silicon Forest and the expansion of Tektronix and Intel, sportswear company Nike, Inc., headquartered in Beaverton, is the state's largest public corporation with an annual revenue of $46.7 billion. 13. Maine Artically-Oregon border welcome sign at Denio. Nevadae. The origin of the state's name is uncertain. The earliest geographical designation origin, meaning bigger, comes from the Spanish historical chronicle Relation de la Alta y Baja California, 1598. 14. Written by Rodrigo Montezuma of New Spain. Here it refers to the region of the Columbia River as it was encountered by the first Spanish scouts. The J in the Spanish phrase el origin was eventually corrupted into a G. 15. Another possible source is the Spanish word oregano, referring to the plant with that name, that grows in the southern part of the region. It is also possible that the area around the Columbia River was named after a stream in Spain called Arroyo del Oregon, located in the province of Ciudad Real. The term referred to the then mythical river of the West, the Columbia River. By 1778, the spelling had shifted to Oregon. 16. Roger's Rodion's suggestion is that this name comes from the French word ouragan, windstorm or hurricane. which was applied to the River of the West based on Native American tales of powerful Chinook winds on the lower Columbia River, or perhaps from first-hand French experience with the Chinook winds of the Great Plains. At the time, the River of the West was thought to rise in western Minnesota and flow west through the Great Plains. 18. Another suggestion comes from Joaquin Miller, who wrote in Sunset Magazine in 1900 for the name, Oregon, is rounded down phonetically from uv aguaragua, Oregon. Oregon given probably by the same Portuguese navigator that named the Far Islands after his first officer, and it literally, in a large way, means cascades. Hear the waters. You should steam up the Columbia and hear and feel the waters falling out of the clouds of Mount Hood to understand entirely the full meaning of the name Uva Agua, Oregon. 19. Yet another account, endorsed as the most plausible explanation in the book Oregon Geographic Names, was advanced by George R. Stewart in a 1944 article in American Speech. According to Stewart, the name came from an engraver's error in a French map published in the early 18th century, on which the Wisconsin River was spelled Werriconsint, broken on two lines, with the Sint below. So there appeared to be a river flowing to the west named Werricon. According to the Oregon Tourism Commission, present-day Oregonians, Regunics, 20 pronounce the state's name as Oregon, never Oregon. 21. After being drafted by the Detroit Lions in 2002, former Oregon Ducks quarterback Joey Harrington distributed Oregon stickers to members of the media as a reminder of how to pronounce the name of his home state. 22-23. The stickers are sold by the University of Oregon Bookstore. 24. History Maine article, History of Oregon Earliest Inhabitancy. Also, Native American peoples of Oregon and Kennewick Manpaul Showay of the Umatilla tribe, 1899. While there is considerable evidence that Paleo-Indians inhabited the region, the oldest evidence of habitation in Oregon was found at Fort Rock Cave and the Paisley Caves in Lake County. Archaeologist Luther Cressman dated material from Fort Rock to 13,000 to 100 years ago. 25. And there is evidence supporting inhabitants in the region at least 15,000 years ago. 26. During the prehistoric period, the Willamette Valley region was flooded after the collapse of glacial dams from then Lake Missoula, located in what would later become Montana. These massive floods occurred during the last glacial period and filled the valley with 300 to 400 feet 91 to 122 meters of water. 27. By the 16th century, Oregon was home to many Native American groups, including the Chinook, Coquille-Coquille, Bannock, Kalapuya, Klamath, Klickitat, Molalla, Nez Perce, Shasta, Takelma, Umatilla, and Umpqua. 28-20. European and Pioneer Settlement Mine articles, Oregon Country, Oregon Pioneer History, Columbia District, Provisional Government of Oregon, Organic Act Section List of Organic Acts, and Spanish expeditions to the Pacific Northwest near Coos Bay, Oregon, of Francis Drake's first North American encounter, plaque by Oregon State Parks and Oregon Historical Society. The first Europeans to visit Oregon were Spanish explorers led by Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, who sighted southern Oregon off the Pacific coast in 1543. 32. Sailing from Central America on the Golden Hind in 1579 in search of the Strait of Anian during his circumnavigation of the earth, the English explorer and privateer Sir Francis Drake briefly anchored at South Cove, Cape Arago, just south of Coos Bay, before sailing for what is now California. 33:30 for Martin D. Aguilar, continuing separately from Sebastian Vizcaíno's scouting of California, reached as far north as Cape Blanco and possibly to Coos Bay in 1603. 35-36 exploration continued routinely in 1774, starting with the expedition of the frigate Santiago by one Jose Perez Hernandez, and the coast of Oregon became a valuable trade route to Asia. In 1778, British Captain James Cook also explored the coast. 37 French Canadians, Scots, Metis, and other continental natives, e.g. Iroquois trappers, arrived in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, soon to be followed by Catholic clergy. Some traveled as members of the Lewis and Clark and Astor expeditions. Few stayed permanently, such as Etienne Lussier, often referred to as the first European farmer in the state of Oregon. Evidence of the French-Canadian presence can be found in numerous names of French origin, such as Malheur Lake, the Malheur, Grande Ronde, and Deschutes rivers, and the city of La Grande. Furthermore, many of the early pioneers first came out west with the Northwest Company and the Hudson's Bay Company before heading south of the Columbia for better farmland as the fur trade declined. French prairie by the Willamette River and French settlement by the Umpqua River are known as early mixed ancestry settlements. Fort Astoria, as established by John Jacob Astor, in 1813 the Lewis and Clark expedition traveled through northern Oregon also in search of the Northwest Passage. They built their winter fort in 1805 to 1806 at Fort Clatsop, near the mouth of the Columbia River, staying at the encampment from December until March. 38 British explorer David Thompson also conducted overland exploration. In 1811, while working for the Northwest Company, Thompson became the first European to navigate the entire Columbia River. 39. Stopping on the way, at the junction of the Snake River, he posted a claim to the region for Great Britain and the Northwest Company. Upon returning to Montreal, he publicized the abundance of fur-bearing animals in the area. 40. Also in 1811, New Yorker John Jacob Astor financed the establishment of Fort Astoria at the mouth of the Columbia River as a western outpost to his Pacific Fur Company. 41. This was the first permanent European settlement in Oregon. In the War of 1812, the British gained control of all Pacific Fur Company posts. The Treaty of 1818 established joint British and American occupancy of the region west of the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific Ocean. By the 1820s and 1830s, the Hudson's Bay Company dominated the Pacific Northwest from its Columbia District headquarters at Fort Vancouver, built in 1825 by the district's chief factor, John McLaughlin, across the Columbia from present-day Portland. In 1841, the expert trapper and entrepreneur Ewing Young died, leaving considerable wealth and no apparent heir, and no system to probate his estate. A meeting followed Young's funeral, at which a probate government was proposed. 42. Dr. Ira Babcock of Jason Lee's Methodist Mission was elected Supreme Judge. 43. Babcock chaired two meetings in 1842 at Champoeg, halfway between Lee's mission and Oregon City, to discuss wolves and other animals of contemporary concern. These meetings were precursors to an all-citizen meeting in 1843, which instituted a provisional government headed by an executive committee made up of David Hill, Alanson Beers, and Joseph Gale. 44. This government was the first acting public government of the Oregon Country before annexation by the government of the United States. It was succeeded by a second executive committee made up of Peter G. Stewart, Osborne Russell, and William J. Bailey, and this committee was itself succeeded by George Abernethy, who was the first and only governor of Oregon under the provisional government. Also in 1841, Sir George Simpson, governor of the Hudson's Bay Company, reversed the Hudson's Bay Company's long-standing policy of discouraging settlement because it interfered with the lucrative fur trade. 45. He directed that some 200 Red River Colony settlers be relocated to HBC farms near Fort Vancouver, the James Sinclair expedition, in an attempt to hold Columbia District. Starting in 1842 to 1843, the Oregon Trail brought many new American settlers to the Oregon Country. Oregon's boundaries were disputed for a time, contributing to tensions between the UK and the US, but the border was defined peacefully in the 1846 Oregon Treaty. The Oregon Territory was officially organized on August 13, 1848. 47. Settlement increased with the Donation Land Claim Act of 1850 and the forced relocation of the native population to Indian Reservat. Ions in Oregon. The first Oregon proposition for a railroad in Oregon was made in 1850 by H.M. Knighton, the original owner of the town site of St. Helens. Knighton asserted that this would fulfill his township's belief that it should be the supreme metropolitan seaport in that area upon the Columbia River, as opposed to Portland. He suggested building a railroad in 1851 from St. Helens through the Cornelius Pass and across Washington County to the city of Lafayette, which was at the time the big town of the Willamette Valley. 4849. Black exclusion laws in December 1844. Oregon passed its first black exclusion law, which prohibited African Americans from entering the territory while simultaneously prohibiting slavery. Slave owners who brought their slaves with them were given 3 years before they were forced to free them. Any African Americans in the region after the law was passed were forced to leave, and those who did not comply were arrested and beaten. They received no less than 20 and no more than 39 stripes across the back if they still did not leave. This process could be repeated every 6 months. 50-state slavery played a major part in Oregon's history and even influenced its path to statehood. The territory's request for statehood was delayed several times as members of Congress argued among themselves whether the territory should be admitted as a free or slave state. Eventually, politicians from the South agreed to allow Oregon to enter as a free state in exchange for opening slavery to the southwestern U.S. 51. Oregon was admitted to the Union on February 14, 1859, though no one in Oregon knew it until March 15, 52, founded as a refuge from disputes over slavery. Oregon had a whites-only clause in its original. At the outbreak of the American Civil War, regular U.S. troops were withdrawn and sent east to aid the Union. Volunteer cavalry recruited in California were sent north to Oregon to keep peace and protect the populace. The 1st Oregon Cavalry served until June 1865. Post-Reconstruction in the 1880s, the growth of railroads expanded the state's lumber, wheat, and other agricultural markets, and the rapid growth of its cities. 55. Due to the abundance of timber and waterway access via the Willamette River, Portland became a major force in the lumber industry of the Pacific Northwest and quickly became the state's largest city. It would earn the nickname Stumptown. 56. And would later become recognized as one of the most dangerous port cities in the United States due to racketeering and illegal activities at the turn of the 20th century. Of 57. The bombing site is now located in the Mitchell Recreation Area. Industrial expansion began in earnest following the 1933-1937 construction of the Bonneville Dam on the Columbia River. Hydroelectric power, food, and lumber provided by Oregon helped fuel the development of the West. Although the periodic fluctuations in the U.S. building industry have hurt the state's economy on multiple occasions, Portland, in particular, experienced a population boom between 1900 and 1930, tripling in size. The arrival of World War II also provided the northwest region of the state with an industrial boom, where Liberty ships and aircraft carriers were constructed. 61. During the 1970s, the Pacific Northwest was particularly affected by the 1973 oil crisis, with Oregon suffering a substantial shortage. 62. In 1971, the Oregon Beverage Container Act of 1971, 63, popularly called the Bottle Bill, became the first law of its kind in the United States. The Bottle Bill system in Oregon was created to control litter. In practice, the system promotes recycling, not reusing, and the collected containers are generally destroyed and made into new containers. 10 states, 64, currently have similar laws. Geography also. List of regions of Oregon. Crater Lake Oregon is 295 miles for 175 kilometers north to south at longest distance, and 395 miles 636 kilometers east to west, with an area of 98,381 square miles, 254,810 square kilometers, Oregon is slightly large. It is the 9th largest state in the U.S. 70. Oregon's highest point is the summit of Mount Hood at 11,249 feet, 3,429 meters. And its lowest point is the sea level of the Pacific Ocean along the Oregon coast. 71. Oregon's mean elevation is 3,300 feet, 1,006 meters. Crater Lake National Park, the state's only national park, is the site of the deepest lake in the U.S. at 1,943 feet, 592 meters. 72. Oregon claims the D River as the shortest river in the world. 73. Though the state of Montana makes the same claim of its Roe River. 74. Oregon is also home to Mill Ends Park in Portland. 75. The smallest park in the world at 450 square inches, 0.29 square meters. Oregon is split into 8 geographical regions. In western Oregon, Oregon coast west of the Coast Range, the Willamette Valley, Rogue Valley, Cascade Range, and Klamath Mountains, and in central and eastern Oregon, the Columbia Plateau, the High Desert, and the Blue Mountains. Oregon lies into time zones. Most of Malheur County is in the Mountain Time Zone, while the rest of the state lies in the Pacific Time Zone. Crater Lake National Park is a national park of the United States located in southern Oregon. Established in 1902, Crater Lake is the 5th oldest national park in the United States and the only national park in Oregon. 3. The park encompasses the caldera of Crater Lake, a remnant of Mount Mazama, a destroyed volcano, and the surrounding hills and forests. The lake is 1,949 feet, 594 meters deep at its deepest point, for which makes it the deepest lake in the United States, the 2nd deepest in North America, and the 10th deepest in the world. For Crater Lake is often referred to as the 7th deepest lake in the world, but this former listing excludes the approximately 3,000 foot 910 meters depth of subglacial Lake Vostok in Antarctica, which resides under nearly 13,000 feet for 1,000 meters of ice, and the recent report of a 2,740 foot 840 meters maximum depth for Lake O'Higgins San Martin, located on the border of Chile. However, when comparing its average depth of 1,148 feet 350 meters to the average depth of other deep lakes, Crater Lake becomes the deepest in the Western Hemisphere and the 3rd deepest in the world. The impressive average depth of this volcanic lake is due to the nearly symmetrical for 1,000-foot deep, 1,200 meters caldera formed 700 years ago, about 8 Kia, during the violent climactic eruptions and subsequent collapse of Mount Mazama and the relatively moist climate that is typical of the crest of the Cascade Range. The caldera rim ranges in elevation from 7,000 to 8,000 feet to 1,100 to 2,400 meters. The United States Geological Survey benchmark elevation of the lake surface is 6,178 feet, 1,883 meters. The national park encompasses 183,224 acres, 74,148 hectares, 286.88 square miles, 741.48 square kilometers. 1. Crater Lake has no streams flowing into or out of it. All water that enters the lake is eventually lost from evaporation or subsurface seepage. The lake's water commonly has a striking blue hue, and the lake is refilled entirely from direct precipitation in the form of snow and rain. Crater Lake Klamath, GWAS-2, is a volcanic crater lake in south-central Oregon in the western United States. It is the main feature of Crater Lake National Park and is a tourist attraction for its deep blue color and water clarity. The lake partly fills a 2,148-foot deep, 655 meters caldera 3 that was formed around 7,700 plus or minus 150 years ago by the collapse of the volcano Mount Mazama. No rivers flow into or out of the lake. The evaporation is compensated for by rain and snowfall at a rate such that the total amount of water is replaced every 150 years. 5. With a depth of 1,949 feet, 590 for meters. 6. The lake is the deepest in the world. It ranks 11th for maximum depth, as well as 5th for mean depth. Crater Lake features two small islands. Wizard Island, located near the western shore of the lake, is a cinder cone about 316 acres, 128 hectares in size. Phantom Ship, a natural rock pillar, is located near the southern shore. Since 2002, one of Oregon's regular issue license plate design has featured Crater Lake 7, and a one-time plate surcharge is used to support the operation of Crater Lake National Park. 8. The commemorative Oregon State Quarter, which was released by the United States Mint in 2005, features an image of Crater Lake on its reverse. 9. The lake and surrounding park areas offer many recreational activities, including hiking, biking, snowshoeing, fishing, and cross-country skiing, and during the summer, campgrounds and lodges at Crater Lake are open to visitors. The Pacific Time Zone (PT) is a time zone encompassing parts of Western Canada, the Western United States, and Western Mexico. Places in this zone observe Standard Time by subtracting 8 hours from Coordinated Universal Time UTC 8 o'clock. During Daylight Saving Time, a time offset of UTC 7 o'clock is used. In the United States and Canada, this time zone is generically called the Pacific Time Zone. Specifically, time in this zone is referred to as Pacific Standard Time (PST) when Standard Time is being observed early November to mid-March, and Pacific Daylight Time (PDT) when Daylight Saving Time mid-March to early November is being observed. In Mexico, the corresponding time zone is known as the Zona Noros Northwest Zone and observes the same daylight saving schedule as the United States and Canada. The largest city in the Pacific Time Zone is Los Angeles, whose metropolitan area is also the largest in the time zone. The zone is 2 hours ahead of the Hawaii Aleutian Time Zone, 1 hour ahead of the Alaska Time Zone, 1 hour behind the Mountain Time Zone, 2 hours behind the Central Time Zone, 3 hours behind the Eastern Time Zone, and 4 hours behind the Atlantic Time Zone. Geology and Terrain. Also, Geology of Oregon, List of rivers in Oregon, List of Oregon mountain ranges, and List of Oregon State Parks. Mount Hood is the highest peak in Oregon. Western Oregon's mountainous regions, home to 3 of the most prominent mountain peaks of the U.S. including Mount Hood, were formed by the volcanic activity of the Juan de Fuca Plate, a tectonic plate that poses a continued threat of volcanic activity and earthquakes in the region. The most recent major activity was the 1700 Cascadia earthquake. 76. Washington's Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, an event visible from northern Oregon and affecting some areas there. 77. The Columbia River, which forms much of Oregon's northern border, also played a major role in the region's geological evolution, as well as its economic and cultural development. The Columbia is one of North America's largest rivers, and one of 2 rivers to cut through the Cascades. The Klamath River in southern Oregon is the other. About 15,000 years ago, the Columbia repeatedly flooded much of Oregon during the Missoula floods. The modern fertility of the Willamette Valley is largely the result. Plentiful salmon made parts of the river, such as Celilo Falls, hubs of economic activity for thousands of years. Today, Oregon's landscape varies from rainforest in the Coast Range to barren desert in the southeast, which still meets the technical definition of a frontier. Oregon's geographical center is further west than any of the other 48 contiguous states, although the westernmost point of the lower 48 states is in Washington. Central Oregon's geographical features range from high desert and volcanic rock formations resulting from lava beds. The Oregon Badlands Wilderness is in this region of the state. 78 rainforests are forests characterized by a closed and continuous tree canopy, moisture-dependent vegetation, the presence of epiphytes and lianas, and the absence of wildfire. Rainforests can be generally classified as tropical rainforests or temperate rainforests, but other types have been described. Estimates vary from 40% to 75% of all biotic species being indigenous to the rainforests. 1. There may be many millions of species of plants, insects, and microorganisms still undiscovered in tropical rainforests. Tropical rainforests have been called the jewels of the earth and the world's largest pharmacy, because over 1/4 of natural medicines have been discovered there. To rainforests as well as endemic rainforest species are rapidly disappearing due to deforestation, the resulting habitat loss and pollution of the atmosphere. 3. Central Oregon is a geographic region in the U.S. state of Oregon and is traditionally considered to be made up of Deschutes, Jefferson, and Crook counties. Other definitions include larger areas, often encompassing areas to the north towards the Columbia River, eastward towards Burns, or south towards Klamath Falls. These 3 counties have a combined population of 200,431 as of the 2010 census, with Deschutes the largest of the 3 counties, having approximately 4 times the population of the other 2 counties combined. As of 2015, the most populous city in the region is Bend, with an estimated 87,014 residents. 2. As defined by the 3-county definition. Central Oregon covers 7,833 square miles, 20,290 square kilometers of land. Central Oregon has had 3 record tourism years, beginning in 2012. Over 2.2 million people visited Central Oregon in 2012 and again in 2013. The region is located in the middle of the state, with the Cascades to the west dividing the state from north to south, and the smaller Ochoco Mountains to the east. Portions of the region are part of a basalt plateau formed by the Columbia River Basalt Group. Others are part of the slopes of the Cascades, and others part of the basin and range. The climate of the area is primarily arid due to the rain-shadow effect of the Cascades on the western boundary of the region. Outdoor recreational activities, timber, and ranching are the primary economic activities. The Oregon High Desert is located in the southeast of the U.S. state of Oregon, east of the Cascade Range, and south of the Blue Mountains. The desert covers most of 5 Oregon counties and averages for 1,000 feet, 1,200 meters, in altitude. The northern region is part of the Columbia Plateau, where higher levels of rainfall allow the largest industry on private land to be the cultivation of alfalfa and hay. The southwest region is part of the Great Basin, and the southeast is the lower Ohi River watershed. The U.S. Bureau of Land Management owns most of the region's public land and manages more than 30,000 square miles, 78,000 square kilometers, not verified in body, including 5 rivers designated as wild and scenic. Compared to western Oregon, the high desert is arid, averaging 15 inches 380 millimeters of annual rainfall. Contrary to its name, most of the high desert is not dry enough to truly qualify as desert, and biologically, most of the region is classified as shrubland or steppe. At 9,733 feet to 1,967 meters above sea level, the summit of Steens Mountain is the highest point. The broad fault block mountain is characteristic of the basin and range plate tectonics of the high desert. About 16 million years ago, during the early Miocene epoch, lava flows from volcanic eruptions covered about half the surface area of Oregon. The Earth's crust then began stretching, giving way to further volcanic activity from 15 million to 2 million years ago. Several ice ages over this time form the large lakes in the high desert. The climate of the high desert provides habitat for mammals such as pronghorn, coyote, mule deer, black-tailed jackrabbit, and cougar. Birds common in the region include sage grouse, California quail, and prairie falcon. The western juniper is the most common tree in the region, and big sagebrush and common woolly sunflower are the region's most widespread plants. The Oregon Badlands Wilderness is a 29,301-acre, 11,858 hectares wilderness area located east of Bend and Deschutes and Crook counties in the U.S. state of Oregon. The wilderness is managed by the Bureau of Land Management as part of the National Landscape Conservation System and was created by the Omnibus Public Land Management Act of 2009, which was signed into law by President Barack Obama on the 30th of March 2000. The area is known for igneous castle-like rock formations, harsh terrain, ancient juniper trees, sagebrush, and extensive arid land. Desert wildflowers, dry river canyons, and Native American pictographs can be found. 2. The blind Iditarod racer Rachel Storrs trained in the area. 3. And the wilderness is home to the western terminus of the Oregon Desert Trail. For 5. A lava field, sometimes called a lava bed, is a large, mostly flat area of lava flows. Such features are generally composed of highly fluid basalt lava and can extend for tens or hundreds of kilometers across the underlying terrain. 1. Flora and Fauna. Main article. Fauna of Oregon. Typical of a western state, Oregon is home to a unique and diverse array of wildlife. Roughly 60% of the state is covered in forest, 79%, while the areas west of the Cascades are more densely populated by forest, making up around 80% of the landscape. Some 60% of Oregon's forests are within federal land. 79. Oregon is the top timber producer of the lower 48 states. 1280. Typical tree species include the Douglas fir, the state tree, as well as redwood, ponderosa pine, western red cedar, and hemlock. 81. Ponderosa pine are more common in the Blue Mountains in the eastern part of the state, and firs are more common in the west. Antilocapra americana pronghorn. Many species of mammals live in the state, which include opossums, shrews, moles, little pocket mice, Great Basin pocket mice, dark kangaroo mouse, California kangaroo rat, chisel-toothed kangaroo rat, Ord's kangaroo rat, 82 bats, rabbits, pikas, mountain beavers, chipmunks, squirrels, yellow-bellied marmots, beavers the state mammal, porcupines, coyotes, wolves, foxes, 83 black bears, raccoons, badgers, skunks, antelopes, cougars, bobcats, lynxes, deer, elk, and moose. Moose have not always inhabited the state, but came to Oregon in the 1960s. The Wallowa Valley herd numbered about 60 as of 2013. 86 gray wolves were extirpated from Oregon around 1930, but have since found their way back. Most reside in northeast Oregon, with two packs living in the south-central part. 87. Although their existence in Oregon is unconfirmed, reports of grizzly bears still turn up, and it is probable some still move into eastern Oregon from Idaho. 88. Oregon is home to what is considered the largest single organism in the world, an Armillaria solidips fungus beneath the Malheur National Forest of eastern Oregon. 11. Oregon has several national park system sites, including Crater Lake National Park in the southern part of the Cascades, John Day Fossil Beds National Monument east of the Cascades, Lewis and Clark National Historical Park on the north coast, and Oregon Caves National Monument. Other areas that were considered for potential national park status in the 20th century include the southern Oregon coast, Mount Hood, and Hell's Canyon to the east. 89. Climate. Main article. Climate of Oregon. Cap'n climate types in Oregon. Most of Oregon has a generally mild climate, though there is significant variation given the variety of landscapes across the state. 90. The state's western region, west of the Cascade Range, has an oceanic climate, populated by dense evergreen mixed forests. Western Oregon's climate is heavily influenced by the Pacific Ocean. The western third of Oregon is very wet in the winter, moderately to very wet during the spring and fall, and dry during the summer. The relative humidity of western Oregon is high except during summer days, which are semi-dry to semi-humid. Eastern Oregon typically sees low humidity year-round. 91. The state's southwestern portion, particularly the Rogue Valley, has a Mediterranean climate with drier and sunnier winters and hotter summers, similar to Northern California. 92. Oregon's northeastern portion has a steppe climate, and its high-terrain regions have a subarctic climate. like Western Europe, Oregon, and the Pacific Northwest in general, is considered warm for its latitude, and the state has far milder winters at a given elevation than comparable latitudes elsewhere in North America, such as the upper Midwest, Ontario, Quebec, and New England. 91. However, the state ranks fifth for coolest summer temperatures of any state in the country, after Maine, Idaho, Wyoming, and Alaska. 93. The eastern two-thirds of Oregon, which largely comprise high desert, have cold, snowy winters and very dry summers. Much of the east is semi-arid to arid like the rest of the Great Basin, though the Blue Mountains are wet enough to support extensive forests. Most of Oregon receives significant snowfall, but the Willamette Valley, where 60% of the population lives, 94, has considerably milder winters for its latitude and typically sees only light snowfall. 91. Oregon's highest recorded temperature is 119 degrees Fahrenheit, 48 Celsius, which was set at Prineville on July 29, 1898, and tied at Pendleton on August 10, 1898, and Pelton Dam on June 29, 2021. 95. The lowest recorded temperature is 54 F48C at Seneca on February 10, 1933. 96. Cities and towns. Further information. List of cities and unincorporated communities in Oregon. Oregon's population is largely concentrated in the Willamette Valley, which stretches from Eugene in the south, home of the University of Oregon, through Corvallis, home of Oregon State University, and Salem, the capital, to Portland, Oregon's largest city. 97. Astoria, at the mouth of the Columbia River, was the first permanent English-speaking settlement west of the Rockies in what is now the U.S. Oregon City, at the end of the Oregon Trail, was the Oregon Territory's first incorporated city and was its first capital from 1848 until 1852, when the capital was moved to Salem. Bend, near the geographic center of the state, is one of the 10 fastest-growing metropolitan areas in the U.S. 98 better source in southern Oregon. Medford is a rapidly growing metro area and is home to the Rogue Valley International Medford Airport, the state's third busiest airport. To the south, near the California border, is the city of Ashland. Eastern Oregon is sparsely populated, but is home to Hermiston, which with a population of 18,000 is the largest and fastest-growing city in the region. 99. Portland, Portland is the most populous city in the U.S. state of Oregon, located in the Pacific Northwest region. Situated close to northwest Oregon at the confluence of the Willamette and Columbia rivers, it is the county seat of Multnomah County, Oregon's most populous county. As of 2020, Portland's population was 652,503, 11, making it the 27th most populous city in the United States, the 6th most populous on the West Coast, and the 3rd most populous in the Pacific Northwest after Seattle and Vancouver. 12. Approximately 2.5 million people live in the Portland metropolitan area, making it the 25th most populous in the United States. Almost half of Oregon's population resides within the Portland metro area, named after Portland, Maine. 13, which is itself named after England's Isle of Portland. The Oregon settlement began to be populated near the end of the Oregon Trail in the 1840s. Its water access provided convenient transportation of goods, and the timber industry was a major force in the city's early economy. At the turn of the 20th century, the city had a reputation as one of the most dangerous port cities in the world, and was a hub for organized crime and racketeering. This reputation dissipated after its economy experienced an industrial boom during World War II, and it became known for its growing liberal and progressive political values from the 1960s onwards. 14, earning it a reputation as a bastion of counterculture exemplified by the popular slogan, "Keep Portland Weird." 15. This aspect of the city has since been championed by organizations such as Weird Portland United. 16. and the comedy series Portlandia 2011 to 2018. 17. The city operates with a mayor-council government system, guided by a mayor and 12 city councilors, as well as Metro, the only directly elected metropolitan planning organization in the United States. 1819. Its climate is marked by warm, dry summers and cool, rainy winters. This climate is ideal for growing roses, and Portland has been called the City of Roses for over a century. 20. Benton County is one of the 36 counties in the U.S. state of Oregon. As of the 2020 census, the population was 95,184. 1. Its county seat is Corvallis. 2. The county was named after Thomas Hart Benton, a U.S. senator who advocated American control over the Oregon country. Benton County is designated as the Corvallis, or Metropolitan Statistical Area, which is included in the Portland-Vancouver-Salem, ORWA Combined Statistical Area. It is in the Willamette Valley. Demographics. The 2020 U.S. Census determined that the population of Oregon was 4,237,256 in 2020, a 10.60% increase over the 2010 census. 100 for Oregon was the nation's top moving destination in 2014, with 2 families moving into the state for everyone moving out 66.4% to 33.6%. 105. Oregon was also the top moving destination in 2013. 106, and the second most popular destination in 2010 through 2012. 107. 108. As of the 2020 census, the population of Oregon was 4,237,256. The gender makeup of the state was 49.5% male and 50.5% female. 20.5% of the population were under the age of 18, 60.8% were between the ages of 18 and 64, and 18.8% were 65 years of age or older. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's 2022 Annual Homeless Assessment Report, there were an estimated 17,959 homeless people in Oregon. 111, according to the 2020 census. 13.9% of Oregon's population was of Hispanic or Latino origin of any race, and 71.7% non-Hispanic. White to 0.0% African American, 1.5% Native American, for 0.6% Asian, 1.5% Pacific Islander, and 10.5% 2 or more races. According to the 2016 American Community Survey, 12.4% of Oregon's population were of Hispanic or Latino origin of any race. Mexican 10.4%, Puerto Rican 0.3%, Cuban 0.1%, and other Hispanic or Latino origin 1.5%. 117. The 5 largest ancestry groups for white Oregonians were German 19.1%, Irish 11.7%, English 11.3%, American 5.3%, and Norwegian 3.8%. 118. The state's most populous ethnic group, non-Hispanic whites, decreased from 95.8% of the total population in 1970 to 71.7% in 2020, though it increased in absolute numbers. 119. 120. As of 2011, 38.7% of Oregon's children under 1 year of age belong to minority groups, meaning they had at least one parent who is not a non-Hispanic white. 121 of the state's total population, 22.6%, was under the age 18. Around 60% of Oregon's population resides within the Portland metropolitan area. 123. As of 2009, Oregon's population comprised 361,393 foreign-born residents. 124. Of the foreign-born residents, the 3 largest groups are originally from countries in Latin America 47.8%, Asia 27.4%, and Europe 16.5%. 120 for Mexico. Vietnam, China, India, and the Philippines were the top countries of origin for Oregon's immigrants in 2018. 125 The Roma first reached Oregon in the 1890s. There is a substantial Roma population in Willamette Valley and around Portland. 126. The majority of Oregon's population is predominantly of white European ancestry and is American-born. Around one-tenth of Oregon's population is made up of Hispanics. There are also small populations of Asians, Native Americans, and African Americans in state. 127. Agriculture. Oregon's diverse landscapes provide ideal environments for various types of farming. Land in the Willamette Valley owes its fertility to the Missoula floods, which deposited lake sediment from glacial Lake Missoula in western Montana onto the valley floor. 163. In 2016, the Willamette Valley region produced over 100 million pounds 45 knots of blueberries. 164. The industry is governed and represented by the Oregon Department of Agriculture. 165. Oregon is also one of four major world hazelnut Corliss avellana growing regions and produces 95% of the domestic hazelnuts in the United States. While the history of wine production in Oregon can be traced to before Prohibition, it became a significant industry beginning in the 1970s. In 2005, Oregon ranked third among U.S. states with 303 wineries. 166. Due to regional similarities in climate and soil, the grapes planted in Oregon are often the same varieties found in the French regions of Alsace and Burgundy. In 2014, 71 wineries opened in the state. The total is currently 676, which represents a growth of 12% over 2013. 167. In the southern Oregon coast, commercially cultivated cranberries account for about 7% of U.S. production, and the cranberry ranks 23rd among Oregon's top 50 agricultural commodities. Cranberry cultivation in Oregon uses about 27,000 acres, 110 square kilometers, in southern Coos and northern Curry counties, centered around the coastal city of Bandon. In the northeastern region of the state, particularly around Pendleton, both irrigated and dry land wheat is grown. 168. Oregon farmers and ranchers also produce cattle, sheep, dairy products, eggs, and poultry. Caneberries rubus are farmed here. 169. Stamen blight Hapalosferia deformans is significant here and throughout the PNW. 169. Here it especially hinders commercial dewberries. 169. Phytophthora ramorum was first discovered in the 1990s on the California Central Coast. 170, and was quickly found here as well. 171. P. ramorum is of economic concern due to its infestation of rubus and Vaccinium spp, including cranberry and blueberry. 171. Peaches grown in the Willamette Valley are mostly sold directly and do not enter the more distant markets. 172. OSU Extension recommended several peach and nectarine cultivars for Willamette. 172. Approximately 1.3 million acres of agricultural land in Oregon is owned by foreigners, with nearly half being held by Canadians. 173. Forestry and Fisheries. See also list of freshwater fishes of Oregon Fish Ladder at Bonneville Dam, Multnomah County Historic Lumber Sled at Camp 18 in Elsie. Vast forests have historically made Oregon one of the nation's major timber-producing and logging states, but forest fires, such as the Tillamook burn, overharvesting, and lawsuits over the proper management of the extensive federal forest holdings have reduced the timber produced. Between 1989 and 2011, the amount of timber harvested from federal lands in Oregon dropped about 90%, although harvest levels on private land have remained relatively constant. 174. Even the shift in recent years towards finished goods, such as paper and building materials, has not slowed the decline of the timber industry in the state. The effects of this decline have included Weyerhaeuser's acquisition of Portland-based Willamette Industries in January 2002, the relocation of Louisiana Pacific's corporate headquarters from Portland to Nashville, and the decline of former lumber company towns such as Gilchrist. Despite these changes, Oregon still leads the U.S. in softwood lumber production. In 2011, for 1,130 per million board feet, 9,760,000 cubic meters was produced in Oregon, compared with 3,685 million board feet, 700,000 cubic meters in Washington, 1,914 million board feet per 1,520,000 cubic meters in Georgia, and 1,708 million board feet per 1,030,000 cubic meters in Mississippi. 175. The slowing of the timber and lumber industry has caused high unemployment rates in rural areas. 176. Oregon has one of the largest salmon fishing industries in the world, although ocean fisheries have reduced the river fisheries in recent years. 177. Because of the abundance of waterways in the state, it is also a major producer of hydroelectric energy. 178. On June 30, 2022, an emerald ash borer infestation was found in Forest Grove in 2022, the first for Western North America. 179. 180. 181. Tourism and entertainments. Also, list of tourist attractions in Portland, Oregon. Elizabeth stage at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and Ashland tourism is also a strong industry in the state. Tourism is centered on the state's natural features, mountains, forests, waterfalls, rivers, beaches, and lakes, including Crater Lake National Park, Multnomah Falls, the Painted Hills, the Deschutes River, and the Oregon Caves. Mount Hood and Mount Bachelor also draw visitors year-round for skiing and other snow activities. 183. Portland is home to the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, the Portland Art Museum, and the Oregon Zoo, which is the oldest zoo west of the Mississippi River. 184. The International Rose Test Garden is another prominent attraction in the city. Portland has also been named the best city in the world for street food by several publications, including the U.S. News and World Report and CNN. 185. 186. Oregon is home to many breweries, and Portland has the largest number of breweries of any city in the world. 187. Hell's Canyon is one of the largest canyons in the United States. The state's coastal region produces significant tourism as well. 188. The Oregon Coast Aquarium comprises 23 acres, 9.3 hectares along Yaquina Bay in Newport, and was also home to Keiko, the orca whale. 189. It has been noted as one of the top 10 aquariums in North America. 190. Fort Clatsop in Warrenton features a replica of Lewis and Clark's encampment at the mouth of the Columbia River in 1805. The Sea Lion Caves in Florence are the largest system of sea caverns in the U.S. and also attract many visitors. 191. Oceanarium at the Oregon Coast Aquarium in Southern Oregon. The Oregon Shakespeare Festival, held in Ashland, is also a tourist draw, as is the Oregon Vortex and the Wolf Creek State Heritage Site, a historic inn where Jack London wrote his 1913 novel, Valley of the Moon. 192. Oregon has also historically been a popular region for film shoots due to its diverse landscapes, as well as its proximity to Hollywood. 193. Movies filmed in Oregon include Animal House, Free Willy, The General, The Goonies, Kindergarten Cop. Oregon native Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, has incorporated many references from his hometown of Portland into the TV series. 194. Additionally, several television shows have been filmed throughout the state, including Portlandia, Grimm, Bates Motel, and Leverage. 195. The Oregon Film Museum is located in the old Clatsop County Jail in Astoria. Additionally, the last remaining Blockbuster store is located in Bend. 196. Technology industries located in Silicon Forest have been a major employer since the 1970s. Tektronix was the largest private employer in Oregon until the late 1980s. Intel's creation and expansion of several facilities in eastern Washington County continued the growth that Tektronix had started. Intel, the state's largest for-profit private employer. 197. 198 operates for large facilities, with Ronler Acres, Jones Farm, and Hawthorne Farm all located in Hillsborough. 199. The spin-offs and startups that were produced by these two companies led to the establishment of the so-called Silicon Forest. The recession and dot-com bust of 2001 hit the region hard. Many high-technology employers reduced the number of their employees or went out of business. Open-source development labs made news in 2004 when they hired Linus Torvalds, developer of the Linux kernel. In 2010, biotechnology giant Genentech opened a $400 million facility in Hillsborough to expand its production capabilities. 200. Oregon is home to several large data centers that take advantage of cheap power and a climate conducive to reducing cooling costs. Google operates a large data center in the Dales, and Facebook built a large data center near Prineville in 2010. Amazon opened a data center near Boardman in 2011, and a fulfillment center in Troutdale in 2018. 201. 202. Corporate headquarters Nike headquarters near Beaverton, Oregon, is also the home of large corporations in other industries. The world headquarters of Nike is located near Beaverton. Medford is home to Harry and David, which sells gift items under several brands. Medford is also home to the national headquarters of Lithia Motors. Portland is home to one of the West's largest trade book publishing houses, Graphic Arts Center Publishing. Oregon is also home to Mentor Graphics Corporation, a world leader in electronic design automation located in Wilsonville and employs roughly 4,500 people worldwide. Adidas Corporation's American headquarters is located in Portland and employs roughly 900 full-time workers at its Portland campus. 203. Nike, located in Beaverton, employs roughly 5,000 full-time employees at its 200-acre 81 hectares campus. Nike's Beaverton campus is continuously ranked as a top employer in the Portland area along with competitor Adidas. 204. Intel Corporation employs 22,000 in Oregon, 198, with the majority of these employees located at the company's Hillsborough campus, located about 30 minutes west of Portland. Intel has been a top employer in Oregon since 1974. 205. The U.S. federal government and Providence Health Systems are the top employers in Oregon, with roughly 12,000 federal workers and 14,000 Providence Health workers. The companies headquartered in Oregon are in the Fortune 500, Nike, Inc., at 88, and Lithia Motors at 140. 207. Taxes and budgets. Oregon's biennial state budget to $0.6 billion in 2017 comprises general funds, federal funds, lottery funds, and other funds. 208. Oregon is one of only 5 states that have no sales tax. Oregon voters have been resolute in their opposition to a sales tax, voting proposals down each of the 9 times they have been presented. 210. The last vote for 1993's Measure 1 was defeated by a 75 to 25% margin. 211. The state also has a minimum corporate tax of only $150 a year. 212. Amounting to 5.6% of the general fund in the 2005-7 biennium. Data about which businesses pay the minimum is not available to the public. 213. Better. As a result, the state relies on property and income taxes for its revenue. Oregon has the 5th highest personal income tax in the nation. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, Oregon ranked 41st out of the 50 states in taxes per capita in 2005, with an average amount paid of $1,791.45. 214. A few local governments levy sales taxes on services The city of Ashland, for example, collects a 5% sales tax on prepared food. 215. The city of Portland imposes an arts education and access income tax on residents over 18, a flat tax of $35 collected from individuals earning $1,000 or more per year and residing in a household with an annual income exceeding the federal poverty level. The tax funds Portland school teachers and art-focused nonprofit organizations in Portland. 216. The state of Oregon also allows transit districts to levy an income tax on employers and the self-employed. The state currently collects the tax for Trimit and the Lane Transit District. 217. 218. Oregon is one of 6 states with a revenue limit. 219. The Kicker Law stipulates that when income tax collections exceed state economists' estimates by 2% or more, any excess must be returned to taxpayers. 220. Since the enactment of the law in 1979, refunds have been issued for 7 of the 11 biennia. 221. In 2000, ballot measure 86 converted the Kicker Law from statute to the Oregon Constitution and changed some of its provisions. Federal payments to county governments that were granted to replace timber revenue when logging in national forests was restricted in the 1990s have been under threat of suspension for several years. This issue dominates the future revenue of rural counties, which have come to rely on the payments in providing essential services. 22,255% of state revenues are spent on public education, 23% on human services, child protective services, Medicaid, and senior services, 17% on public safety, and 5% on other services. 223. Oregon has had a $15 bicycle tax for each new bicycles over $200. Since 2018, Oregon is the only state in the nation with a bicycle excise tax. 224. 225. Healthcare Mine article. List of hospitals in Oregon for health insurance. As of 2018, Cambia Health Solutions has the highest market share at 21%, followed by Providence Health. 226. In southern Oregon, Asani runs several hospitals, including Rogue Regional Medical Center. Some hospitals are operated by multi-state organizations such as Peace Health and Common Spirit Health. Some hospitals, such Salem Hospital, operate independently of larger systems. Oregon Health and Science University is a Portland-based medical school that operates to hospitals and clinics. The Oregon Health Plan is the state's Medicaid managed care plan, and it is known for innovations. 228. The Portland area is a mature managed care, and 2/3 of Medicare enrollees are in Medicare Advantage plans. 228. Education. In 2016, the largest school districts in the state were 230 Portland Public Schools, comprising 47,323 students, Salem-Keizer School District, comprising 40,565 students, Beaverton School District, comprising 39,625 students, Hillsborough School District, comprising 21,118 students, and North Clackamas School District, comprising 17,000. Approximately 90.5% of Oregon high school students graduate, improving on the national average of 88.3% as measured from the 2010 U.S. Census. 231. On May 8, 2019, educators across the state protested to demand smaller class sizes, hiring more support staff, such as school counselors, librarians, and nurses, and the restoration of art, music, and physical education classes. The protests caused a dozen school districts to close, which equals to about 600 schools across the state, 230 to colleges and universities. See also, List of colleges and universities in Oregon and Oregon Office of University Coordination. The Memorial Union at Oregon State University Spilly. Since the 1990 passage of Measure 5, which set limits on property tax levels, Oregon has struggled to fund higher education. Since then, Oregon has cut its higher education budget and now ranks 46th in the country in state spending per student. However, 2007 legislation funded the university system far beyond the governor's requested budget, though still capping tuition increases at 3% per year. 233, Oregon supports a total of 7 public universities and 1 affiliate. It is home to 3 public research universities, the University of Oregon-WO in Eugene and Oregon State University OSU in Corvallis, both classified as research universities with very high research activity, and Portland State University, which is classified as a research university with high research activity. 230 for Johnson Hall at the University of Oregon-WO is the state's highest nationally ranked and most selective 235 public university by U.S. News and World Report and Forbes. 236 OSU is the state's only land-grant university, has the state's largest enrollment for fall 2014. 237, and is the state's highest-ranking university according to Academic Ranking of World University, IS, Washington Monthly, and QS World University Rankings. 238. OSU receives more annual funding for research than all other public higher education institutions in Oregon combined. 239. The state's urban Portland State University has Oregon's second-largest enrollment. The state has 3 regional universities: Western Oregon University in Monmouth, Southern Oregon University in Ashland, and Eastern Oregon University in La Grande. The Oregon Institute of Technology has its campus in Klamath Falls. The quasi-public Oregon Health and Science University OHSU includes medical, dental, and nursing schools, and graduate programs in biomedical sciences in Portland and a science and engineering school in Hillsborough. The state also supports 17 community colleges. Elliott Hall at Reed College, Oregon is home to a wide variety of private colleges, the majority of which are located in the Portland area. The University of Portland, a Catholic university, is affiliated with the Congregation of Holy Cross. Reed College, a rigorous liberal arts college in Portland, was ranked by Forbes as the 52nd best college in the country in 2015. 240 other private institutions in Portland include Lewis and Clark College, Multnomah University, Portland Bible College, Warner Pacific College, Cascade College, the National University of Natural Medicine, and Western Seminary, a theological graduate school. Pacific University is in the Portland suburb of Forest Grove. McMinnville is home to Linfield College, while nearby Newburgh is home to George Fox University. Salem is home to 2 private schools: Willamette University, the state's oldest, established during the Provisional Period, and Corbin University. Also located near Salem is Mount Angel Seminary, one of America's largest Roman Catholic seminaries. The state's second medical school, the College of Osteopathic Medicine of the Pacific Northwest, is located in Lebanon. Eugene is home to 3 private colleges: Bushnell University, New Hope Christian College, and Gutenberg College. Law and Government. See also Government of Oregon. Golden Pioneer atop the Oregon State Capitol. A writer in the Oregon Country Book, A Pacific Republic, written in 1839, predicted the territory was to become an independent republic. 4 years later, in 1843, settlers of the Willamette Valley voted in majority for a Republican form of government. 241. The Oregon Country functioned in this way until August 13, 1848, when Oregon was annexed by the U.S. and a territorial government was established. Oregon maintained a territorial government until February 14, 1859, when it was granted statehood. 242 structure. Oregon state government has a separation of powers similar to the federal government, with 3 branches: a legislative branch, the bicameral Oregon Legislative Assembly, an executive branch, which includes an administrative department and Oregon's governor as chief executive, and a judicial branch, headed by the Chief Justice of the Oregon Supreme Court. Governors in Oregon serve 4-year terms and are limited to 2 consecutive terms, but an unlimited number of total terms. Oregon has no lieutenant governor, in case the office of governor is vacated. Article 5. Section 8A of the Oregon Constitution specifies that the Secretary of State is first in line for succession. 243. The other statewide officers are Treasurer, Attorney General, and Labor Commissioner. The biennial Oregon Legislative Assembly consists of a 30-member Senate and a 60-member House. A debate over whether to move to annual sessions is a long-standing battle in Oregon politics, but the voters have resisted the move from citizen legislators to professional lawmakers. Because Oregon's state budget is written in 2-year increments and, there being no sales tax, state revenue is based largely on income taxes, it is often significantly over or under budget. Recent legislatures have had to be called into special sessions repeatedly to address revenue shortfalls resulting from economic downturns, bringing to a head the need for more frequent legislative sessions. Oregon Initiative 71, passed in 2010, mandates the legislature to begin meeting every year for 160 days in odd-numbered years and 35 days in even-numbered years. The state Supreme Court has 7 elected justices, currently including the only 2 openly gay state Supreme Court justices in the nation. They choose one of their own to serve a 6-year term as Chief Justice. Ballot measure of Oregon's Constitution provides for ballot initiatives voted upon by the electorate in general. In the 2000 general election, Oregon voters approved a ballot measure to increase the state minimum wage automatically each year according to inflationary changes, which are measured by the Consumer Price Index CPI. 244. The initiative has been described as a mixed success after 3 years of implementation and calls for change arose. 249 to 150 drug overdose deaths continue to rise, in line with other states. Funds allocated to treatment and other services have apparently not increased the success of these alternate outcomes. 251 to 152. In 2024, Governor Kotek signed a bill reversing the decriminalization component of the ballot measure while also expanding funding for drug treatment. 253. In 2020, the state also approved a ballot measure to create a legal means of administering psilocybin for medicinal use, making it the first state in the country to legalize the drug. 254. Federal representation. Like all U.S. states, Oregon is represented by 2 senators. Following the 1980 census, Oregon had 5 congressional districts. After Oregon was admitted to the Union, it began with a single member in the House of Representatives, Lafayette Grover, who served in the 35th U.S. Congress for less than a month. Congressional apportionment increased the size of the delegation following the censuses of 1890, 1910, 1940, and 1980. Following the 2020 census, Oregon gained a 6th congressional seat. The U.S. District Court for the District of Oregon hears federal cases in the state. The court has courthouses in Portland, Eugene, Medford, and Pendleton. Also in Portland is the Federal Bankruptcy Court, with a 2nd branch in Eugene. 256. Oregon, among other western states and territories, is in the 9th Court of Appeals. One of the court's meeting places is at the Pioneer Courthouse in downtown Portland, a National Historic Landmark built in 1869. Politics Mine article, Politics of Oregon. See also, Political Party Strength in Oregon. Trim up of the popular vote by county, 2016 presidential election, party registration in Oregon, 1950 to 2006. Total Democratic Party, Republican Party, non-affiliated or other party registration by Oregon County. February 2023, Democrat is greater than or equal to 30%. Democrat is greater than or equal to 40%. Democrat is greater than or equal to 50%. Republican is greater than or equal to 30%. Republican is greater than or equal to 40%. Republican is greater than or equal to 50%. Unaffiliated is greater than or equal to 30%. Unaffiliated is greater than or equal to 40%. Political opinions in Oregon are geographically split by the Cascade Range, with Western Oregon being more liberal and Eastern Oregon being conservative. 257. In a 2008 analysis of the 2004 presidential election, a political analyst found that according to the application of a Likert scale, Oregon boasted both the most liberal Kerry voters and the most conservative Bush voters, making it the most politically polarized state in the country. 258. The base of Democratic support is largely concentrated in the urban centers of the Willamette Valley. The eastern two-thirds of the state, beyond the Cascade Mountains, typically votes Republican. In 2000 and 2004, George W. Bush carried every county east of the Cascades. However, the region's sparse population means the more populous counties in the Willamette Valley usually outweigh the eastern counties in statewide elections. In 2008, for instance, Republican Senate incumbent Gordon H. Smith lost his bid for a third term, even though he carried all but 8 counties. His Democratic challenger, Jeff Merkley, won Multnomah County by 142,000 votes, more than double the overall margin of victory. Oregonians have voted for the Democratic presidential candidate in every election since 1988. In 2004 and 2006, Democrats won control of the state Senate and then the House. Since 2023, Oregon has been represented by 4 Democrats and 2 Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives. Since 2009, the state has had 2 Democratic U.S. Senators, Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley. Oregon voters have elected Democratic governors in every election since 1986, most recently electing Tina Kotek over Republican Christine Drazan and Independent Betsy Johnson in the 2022 gubernatorial election. During Oregon's history, it has adopted many electoral reforms proposed during the Progressive Era through the efforts of William S. Urin and his Direct Legislation League. Under his leadership, the state overwhelmingly approved a ballot measure in 1902 that created the initiative and referendum for citizens to introduce or approve proposed laws or amendments to the state constitution directly, making Oregon the first state to adopt such a system. Today, roughly half of U.S. states do so. 259 and following years, the primary election to select party candidates was adopted in 1904, and in 1908 the Oregon Constitution was amended to include recall of public officials. More recent amendments include the nation's first doctor-assisted suicide law, 260 called the Death with Dignity Act, which was challenged unsuccessfully in 2005 by the Bush administration in a case heard by the U.S. Supreme Court, legalization of medical cannabis, and among the nation's strongest anti-urban sprawl and pro-environment laws. Citation needed. More recently, 2004's Measure 37 reflects a backlash against such land use laws. However, a further ballot measure in 2007, Measure 49, curtailed many of the provisions of 37. Of the measures placed on the ballot, since 1902, the people have passed 99 of the 288 initiatives and 25 of the 61 referendums on the ballot. Though not all of them survived challenges in courts, see Pierce v. Society of Sisters. For an example, during the same period, the legislature has referred 363 measures to the people, of which 206 have passed. Oregon pioneered the American use of postal voting, beginning with experimentation approved by the Oregon Legislative Assembly in 1981 and culminating with a 1998 ballot measure mandating that all counties conduct elections by mail. It remains one of just 2 states, the other being Washington, where voting by mail is the only method of voting. In 1994, Oregon adopted the Oregon Health Plan, which made health care available to most of its citizens without private health insurance. 261. Oregon is the only state that does not have a mechanism to impeach executive office holders, including the governor. 262. removing an executive office holder would require a recall election. It is one of 4 states that requires 2/3 of members of the House and Senate be present to establish a quorum. 263. It is one of a minority of states that does not have a lieutenant governor. 264. The Secretary of State is the first in line of succession to replace the governor in event of a vacancy. This last occurred in 2015, when Gov. John Kitzhaber resigned amid allegation of influence peddling, and Secretary of State Kate Brown became governor. Brown won a special election in 2016 to retain the position and won a full 4-year term in 2018. In the U.S. Electoral College, Oregon cast 7 votes through the 2020 presidential election. Under apportionment of Congress under the 2020 U.S. Census, Oregon added a 6th congressional seat. Under the Electoral College formula of votes equaling the number of U.S. House seats plus the 2 U.S. senators, Oregon will cast 8 votes in the 2024 election. Oregon has supported Democratic candidates in the last 9 elections. Democratic incumbent Barack Obama won the state by a margin of 12 percentage points, with over 50% of the popular vote in 2012. In the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton won Oregon by 11 percentage points, 265. In the 2020 election, Joe Biden won Oregon by 16 percentage points over his opponent, Donald Trump, 266. In a 2020 study, Oregon was ranked as the easiest state for citizens to vote in, 267. Oregon retains the death penalty, though there is currently a gubernatorial hold on executions, 268. Sports. See also, sports in Portland, Oregon Moda Center, formerly the Rose Garden, during a Portland Trail Blazers game. Oregon is home to 3 major professional sports teams, the Portland Trail Blazers of the NBA, the Portland Thorns FC of the NWSL, and the Portland Timbers of MLS. 269. Until 2011, the only major professional sports team in Oregon was the Portland Trail Blazers of the National Basketball Association. From the 1970s to the 1990s, the Blazers were one of the most successful teams in the NBA in terms of both win-loss record and attendance. 270. In the early 21st century, the team's popularity declined due to personnel and financial issues, but revived after the departure of controversial players and the acquisition of new players such as Bran, Don Roy, and Lamarcus Aldridge, and still later Damian Lillard. 271. 272. The Blazers play in the Moda Center in Portland's Lloyd District, which also is home to the Portland Winterhawks of the Junior Western Hockey League. 273. The Portland Timbers play at Providence Park, just west of downtown Portland. The Timbers have a strong following, with the team regularly selling out its games. 274. The Timbers repurposed the formerly multi-use stadium into a soccer-specific stadium in fall 2010, increasing the seating in the process. 275. The Timbers operate Portland Thorns FC, a women's soccer team that has played in the National Women's Soccer League since the league's first season in 2013. The Thorns, who also play at Providence Park, have won 2 league championships in the inaugural 2013 season and also in 2017, and have been by far the NWSL's attendance leader in each of the league's seasons. Providence Park during a Portland Thorns FC Machoigean and Hillsborough have minor league baseball teams. The Eugene Emeralds and the Hillsborough Hops both play in the Hiahia West. 276. Portland has had minor league baseball teams in the past, including the Portland Beavers and Portland Rockies, who played most recently at Providence Park when it was known as PGE Park. Salem also previously had a Class A short season Northwest League team, the Salem Kaiser Volcanoes, that was not included in the 2021 minor league baseball reorganization. The Volcanoes ownership later formed the Amateur Mavericks Independent Baseball League, which is fully based in Salem. 277. The Oregon State Beavers and the University of Oregon Ducks football teams of the Pac-12 Conference meet annually in the Oregon State football rivalry. Both schools have had recent success in other sports as well. Oregon State won back-to-back college baseball championships in 2006 and 2007, 278, winning a third in 2018, 279, and the University of Oregon won back-to-back men's cross-country championships in 2007 and 2008. The Portland Trail Blazers, colloquially known as the Blazers, are an American professional basketball team based in Portland, Oregon. The Trail Blazers compete in the National Basketball Association (NBA) as a member of the Northwest Division of the Western Conference. The team played its home games in the Memorial Coliseum before moving to Moda Center in 1995, called the Rose Garden, until 2013. The franchise entered the league as an expansion team in 1970 and has enjoyed a strong following. From 1977 through 1995, the team sold out 814 consecutive home games, the longest such streak in American major professional sports at the time. 11. The Trail Blazers are the only NBA team based in the Pacific Northwest. The team has advanced to the NBA Finals 3 times, winning the NBA championship once in 1977. Their other NBA Finals appearances were in 1990 and 1992. 12-13. The team has qualified for the playoffs in 37 seasons of their 54-season existence through the 2023-24 season, including a streak of 21 straight appearances from 1983 through 2003, tied for the second longest streak in NBA history. 14-15. The Trail Blazers' 37 playoff appearances rank 4th in the NBA, only behind the Los Angeles Lakers, Boston Celtics, and San Antonio Spurs since the team's inception in 1970. 16. 6 Hall of Fame players have played for the Trail Blazers: Lenny Wilkens, Bill Walton, Clyde Drexler, Drazen Petrovic, Arvydas Sabonis, and Scottie Pippen. 17. Bill Walton is the franchise's most decorated player. He was the NBA Finals Most Valuable Player in 1977 and the regular season MVP the following year. 12-18. For Blazers rookies Jeff Petrie, Sidney Wicks, Brandon Roy, and Damian Lillard have won the NBA Rookie of the Year award. 3 players have earned the Most Improved Player award: Kevin Duckworth 1988, Zach Randolph 2004, and C.J. McCollum 2016. 3 Hall of Fame coaches, Lenny Wilkens, Jack Ramsey, and Rick Edelman, have patrolled the sidelines for the Blazers, and 2 others, Mike Schuller and Mike Dunleavy, have won the NBA Coach of the Year award with the team. 19.